I'm 79 years old now, and for a long time, I believed the same thing many people my age believe, that getting older was the reason I felt tired all the time. Whenever I woke up with less energy, I blamed my age. Whenever I felt drained after a simple day, I blamed my age. It seemed like the obvious explanation. After all, that's what everyone tells us. You're getting older. Of course you're more tired. That's just part of aging. But a few years ago, I started noticing something that didn't make sense. I knew people in their 80s who seemed calmer, lighter, and more energetic than some people 20 years younger. They weren't constantly exhausted. They weren't overwhelmed by every little thing. And the more I paid attention, the more I realized something important. Age wasn't the only difference. The real difference was what they allowed into their lives. That's when I began paying attention to my own days. Not my health, not my medications, not even my age. I started paying attention to where my energy was going. And what I discovered surprised me. Some of the biggest things stealing my energy had nothing to do with aging at all. They were hidden in my daily habits, my relationships, my worries, and the expectations I carried for years without questioning. Today, I want to share the 5 things that were draining me far more than getting older ever did. And if you're over 70, what I'm about to tell you may help you protect the one thing that becomes more valuable than time itself, your energy. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and join our community. Every week, we share simple lessons that can help make these years calmer, healthier, and more meaningful. Now let's talk about the first energy thief that most people never see coming. The first thing that stole more energy from me than aging ever did was something I couldn't see at first. People. Not all people, of course, but the people who constantly took without giving anything back. For many years, I didn't notice it, because I thought being a good person meant always being available. If someone needed help, I helped. If someone wanted my time, I gave it. If someone called with a problem, I listened. And at 79, I can tell you this truth with complete honesty. Some people don't just take your time, they take your energy. The difference is important. Time eventually passes no matter what, but energy is what allows you to enjoy the time you have left. I remember a woman I knew years ago. Every conversation was the same: complaints, worries, criticism, problems that never seemed to have solutions. After speaking with her for 30 minutes, I would sit quietly in my chair and feel exhausted. Nothing difficult had happened. I hadn't lifted anything heavy. I hadn't walked a long distance. Yet somehow, I felt drained. At first, I blamed my age, but then I started paying attention. Whenever I spent time with people who were kind, grateful, and peaceful, I felt fine afterward. Whenever I spent time with people who constantly demanded emotional attention, I felt depleted. The pattern became impossible to ignore. And that's when I learned something many older adults discover too late. Not everyone deserves unlimited access to your energy. After 70, your energy becomes precious. You no longer have endless reserves to waste on unnecessary drama, endless complaints, or relationships that leave you feeling worse than before. That doesn't mean becoming selfish. It means becoming selective. There is a difference. I stopped answering every phone call immediately. I stopped feeling responsible for solving problems that weren't mine. I stopped carrying the emotional weight of people who refused to carry their own. And something remarkable happened. I felt lighter, calmer, stronger, not because my body changed, because my boundaries changed. Many older people think protecting their energy is rude. I used to think that too. Now I believe the opposite. Protecting your energy is an act of self-respect. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot offer peace when you have none left for yourself. And if there is one lesson I wish I had learned decades earlier, it is this. The people who truly care about you will respect your limits. The people who become angry when you set boundaries were often benefiting from the fact that you had none. And once I understood that, I stopped feeling guilty. I started protecting my energy the same way I protected my health, because at this stage of life, they are deeply connected. And yet, as powerful as this realization was, there was another energy thief hiding in my life, one that followed me everywhere, even when I was completely alone. Worry. Not the kind of worry that helps you solve a problem. The kind that quietly sits in the background of your mind, stealing energy hour after hour without accomplishing anything. For years, I thought worrying was a sign of responsibility. I worried about my children. I worried about my grandchildren. I worried about my health, my finances, the future, and sometimes even things that had never happened. Perhaps you know exactly what I'm talking about. You sit down to enjoy a peaceful afternoon, and suddenly your mind starts asking questions. What if something goes wrong? What if my family needs me? What if my health gets worse next year? What if I made the wrong decision? The questions keep coming. And the strange thing is that your body reacts as if those imagined problems are happening right now. Your shoulders tighten. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your mind grows tired. By evening, you feel exhausted, yet nothing difficult actually happened. That was my life for many years. I was spending enormous amounts of energy fighting battles that existed only in my imagination. One day, I caught myself worrying about a situation involving my grandson. I spent nearly an entire week thinking about what might happen. Then the situation resolved itself without any help from me. Nothing I worried about actually occurred, and suddenly I saw something clearly. The worry had cost me far more than the problem ever did. That realization changed the way I looked at my thoughts. I began asking myself a simple question. Can I do something about this today? If the answer was yes, I took action. If the answer was no, I practiced letting it go. Not perfectly, not immediately, but little by little. Because the truth is, worrying often gives us the illusion of control. It feels productive. It feels responsible. But most of the time, it only drains the energy we could be using to enjoy the present moment. At 79, I've learned that peace comes from accepting what is beyond your control. You cannot control the future. You cannot control every outcome. You cannot protect everyone from every disappointment. And carrying those burdens does not make life safer. It only makes life heavier. The day I stopped trying to manage every possible future was the day I started feeling lighter. Not because my problems disappeared, because my relationship with them changed. But as liberating as that lesson was, there was another habit stealing even more energy from me, one that many people, especially women, carry for most of their lives without ever questioning it, trying to make everyone happy. For most of my life, I believed this was a good quality. I believed kindness meant saying yes. I believed love meant sacrifice. I believed being a good wife, mother, friend, or neighbor meant putting other people's needs ahead of my own. And for many years, I rarely questioned it. Whenever someone asked for help, I agreed. Whenever someone needed a favor, I found a way. Whenever I felt tired but someone else wanted something from me, I pushed my own needs aside. At first, it felt noble. Over time, it became exhausting. The strange thing about people pleasing is that it often happens so gradually that you don't notice the cost. You become so focused on keeping everyone else comfortable that you stop asking yourself an important question. What is this costing me? I remember attending gatherings I didn't want to attend, accepting invitations when all I wanted was a quiet afternoon at home, listening to complaints for hours because I didn't want to appear rude, agreeing to things that left me stressed simply because I didn't want someone to feel disappointed. And every time I ignored my own feelings, I paid a price. Not immediately, but slowly, piece by piece, energy by energy. Eventually, I realized something painful. No matter how hard I tried, I could never make everyone happy. Someone would always want more. Someone would always disagree. Someone would always feel disappointed. And suddenly, a question appeared in my mind. If disappointing someone occasionally is unavoidable, why was I sacrificing my own peace trying to prevent it? That question changed everything. At first, setting boundaries felt uncomfortable. The first few times I said no, I felt guilty. The first few times I chose rest over obligation, I worried that people would judge me. But something surprising happened. Most people accepted it, and the few who became upset taught me something valuable. They had become accustomed to unlimited access to my time, my attention, and my energy. The problem wasn't my boundary. The problem was that they didn't like having one. At 79, I no longer believe that love requires constant self-sacrifice. Real love respects limits. Real friendship respects honesty. Real family relationships should not require you to abandon yourself. One of the greatest freedoms I've discovered in later life is understanding that no can be a complete sentence. You do not need a long explanation. You do not need an excuse. You do not need permission to protect your well-being. The truth is, every yes costs something. It costs time. It costs attention. It costs energy. And when your energy becomes one of your most valuable resources, you must spend it wisely. Today, I still help people. I still care deeply about those I love. But I no longer do so at the expense of my own peace, because I finally understand something I wish I had learned decades ago. You cannot build a peaceful life while constantly abandoning yourself. And once I stopped trying to earn approval from everyone around me, I discovered something unexpected. I had far more energy than I thought, but there was still another thief quietly draining it every day, one disguised as productivity, responsibility, and staying busy. And once I stopped trying to earn approval from everyone around me, I discovered something unexpected. For most of my life, I believed being busy was a good thing. A full schedule meant I was useful. A long to-do list meant I was productive. Constant activity meant I was making the most of my time. At least, that's what I told myself. But sometime after my 70s, I began noticing something strange. The busiest days were rarely the happiest ones. In fact, they often left me feeling rushed, distracted, and exhausted. I would spend an entire day moving from one task to another, only to sit down in the evening and wonder why I felt so drained. The answer was simple. I had confused movement with meaning. Many of us grew up believing we should always be doing something. If we sat down, we felt guilty. If we rested, we felt lazy. If we had free time, we immediately looked for a way to fill it. But after 70, that mindset becomes expensive. Every unnecessary obligation takes energy. Every rushed commitment takes energy. Every task added simply for the sake of staying busy takes energy. And unlike when we were younger, that energy is not always easy to replace. I remember one particular week when I had something planned nearly every day. Appointments, errands, phone calls, social commitments. Nothing was particularly difficult. Yet by the end of the week, I felt completely depleted. Not because the activities were bad, because there was no space between them, no time to breathe, no time to reflect, no time to simply enjoy being alive. That was the moment I began asking myself a different question. Instead of asking, what else should I do today? I started asking, what can I remove? That small shift changed everything. I stopped treating every empty hour as a problem that needed solving. I stopped filling my calendar simply because I could. I stopped believing that rest had to be earned, and slowly my days became calmer. The irony is that doing less often allowed me to enjoy more. A quiet cup of coffee in the morning, a slow walk through the neighborhood, reading a book without checking the clock, watching the sunlight move across the room. These moments didn't make my life smaller. They made it richer. At 79, I've learned that a peaceful life is not created by adding more activities. It is created by removing what no longer matters, because busyness can easily disguise itself as purpose, but they are not the same thing. And once I finally understood that difference, I began protecting my energy in an entirely new way. Yet there was one final thief that stole more energy than almost anything else, a thief hiding in the very environments we allow ourselves to live in every day. The environment around us. Not just our physical surroundings, but also the emotional atmosphere we expose ourselves to. For years, I underestimated how much this mattered. I thought I was tired because of age. I thought I was tired because life was becoming more difficult. But eventually, I noticed something remarkable. Certain places left me feeling calm, while others left me feeling drained. Certain conversations lifted my spirit, while others exhausted me. Certain environments nourished me, while others quietly stole my peace. And the older I became, the more sensitive I was to the difference. When you're younger, you can tolerate a great deal of noise and chaos. You can spend hours in stressful environments and recover quickly. But after 70, recovery takes longer. Your nervous system becomes less interested in excitement and more interested in stability. And there is wisdom in that. I remember watching the evening news every night. At first, it felt like staying informed. But over time, I noticed something. The stories were almost always the same: conflict, fear, disasters, arguments, problems I could not solve. And after watching for an hour, I rarely felt informed. I felt anxious. The information remained. The peace disappeared. Eventually, I reduced how much of that negativity I allowed into my life. Not because I wanted to ignore reality, because I wanted to protect my well-being. The same thing happened with social media. Every time I opened it, there seemed to be another argument, another controversy, another reason to feel upset about something beyond my control. And once again, I asked myself a simple question: is this adding energy to my life or taking it away? The answer became obvious, but perhaps the most powerful change happened inside my own home. I began paying attention to what made me feel peaceful: a tidy room, a comfortable chair near a window, fresh air, soft music, quiet mornings, simple routines. These small things may sound insignificant, yet they create an environment where your mind can finally rest. And that rest is more valuable than many people realize. Because peace is not something that happens by accident. It is something we create, one choice at a time, one habit at a time, one boundary at a time. At 79, I no longer believe that aging is the greatest threat to our energy. More often, it is the environments we repeatedly expose ourselves to: the constant noise, the endless drama, the unnecessary stress, the pressure to react to everything. When you remove those things, something beautiful begins to happen. Your mind becomes quieter, your body relaxes, your thoughts become clearer, and for the first time in years, you begin to feel like yourself again. Looking back now, I can honestly say that these 5 thieves stole far more energy from me than aging ever did. Not difficult people, not worry, not people pleasing, not busyness, not unhealthy environments. Each one took a little at a time, so little that I hardly noticed. until one day I realized how much they had cost me. And that realization changed the way I live every single day. For a long time, I believed aging was the reason my energy was disappearing. But at 79, I see things differently. Yes, our bodies change. Yes, we move a little slower. Yes, we need more rest than we once did. But some of the greatest drains on our energy have nothing to do with age. They come from the people who constantly take from us. They come from worries that never become reality. They come from spending years trying to make everyone else happy. They come from staying busy for the sake of being busy. And they come from environments that keep our minds stressed, distracted, and unsettled. The good news is that unlike aging, these are things we can change. Not all at once, not perfectly, but one small choice at a time. You can choose who gets access to your energy. You can choose which worries deserve your attention. You can choose peace over approval. You can choose meaning over busyness. And you can create an environment that supports your well-being instead of draining it. That is the gift of growing older. Not that life becomes easier, but that we finally begin to understand what truly matters. Today, I no longer measure a good day by how much I accomplish. I measure it by how I feel. Do I feel calm? Do I feel present? Do I feel grateful? Do I feel at peace? Because in the end, energy is not just what helps us get through the day. It is what helps us enjoy the life we still have. If this message spoke to you, write the number 1" the comments below. I'd love to know that you're choosing to protect your energy too. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and join our community. Together, we can learn how to make these years not only longer, but calmer, happier, and far more meaningful. Thank you for spending this time with me.